Imagine going into labor 100,000 years ago. There is no hospital, no doctor, no ultrasound, no pain medication, no emergency surgery. And if something goes terribly wrong, there is no ambulance coming. Yet somehow humans survived childbirth generation after generation. But here's where things get strange. Giving birth may have been one of the most dangerous moments in the life of an ancient woman, and at the same time, humans had already developed surprisingly effective ways of dealing with it. So how did ancient humans actually give birth, and what happened when the baby refused to come out? To understand that, we have to go back before cities, before farming, and before written history. Because the first thing you need to understand is that human childbirth has always been unusually difficult. Why? Because of our heads. Human babies have remarkably large heads compared with the size of the mother's pelvis, and as humans evolved to walk upright, the shape of the pelvis became constrained by the mechanics of bipedal walking. So childbirth became a complicated biological puzzle. The baby has to pass through a narrow, curved birth canal, and the baby's head has to rotate during the journey. That's one reason human labor can take hours. Now imagine experiencing that in a world where nobody understands anatomy. There is no medical textbook telling you what is happening. There is only experience passed down from one generation to another. And that knowledge may have been incredibly important, because ancient humans weren't completely helpless. Women had been giving birth for hundreds of thousands of years. Older women had watched mothers give birth. They had helped with previous deliveries. They knew what certain sounds meant. They knew what positions sometimes worked, and they knew when something wasn't normal. In other words, childbirth knowledge probably existed long before anyone wrote it down. But here's where things get fascinating. Ancient humans probably didn't give birth alone. Across many traditional societies, childbirth commonly involved other women helping the mother. These experienced helpers eventually became what we would recognize as midwives. They could support the mother physically, encourage her, help her change positions, prepare the birth area, and assist immediately after the baby arrived. There may have been no hospital, but there could still be a birth team. And that changes the way we imagine prehistoric childbirth. Instead of picturing one terrified woman completely alone in a cave, imagine several women gathered around her, using knowledge passed down through generations. But what position did she give birth in? This is where modern childbirth gets interesting. Today, many women give birth lying on their backs, but that isn't the only possible position. Ancient women could have squatted, knelt, leaned against another person, sat, or positioned themselves in ways that allowed gravity to help. And that may have mattered, because when the body is upright, gravity can assist the baby's movement downward. But there was another major advantage. Changing position could help the mother find a posture that felt more comfortable and allowed her pelvis to move. Of course, we can't know exactly which position every prehistoric woman used. There was no single ancient birthing method. Different communities almost certainly developed different traditions, and some of those traditions may have disappeared forever. Now comes the terrifying part. What happened if the baby became stuck? Today, doctors have procedures that can save a mother and baby during dangerous complications. Emergency surgery can sometimes make the difference between life and death. Ancient humans had nothing comparable.
If labor became dangerously prolonged, if there was severe bleeding, or if the baby was positioned badly, the outcome could be devastating. And this is one reason childbirth would have been such a serious survival challenge. But humans didn't simply accept the danger. They experimented, they learned, they watched, they remembered, and they passed that knowledge to the next generation. Think about how incredible that is. A woman who successfully gave birth didn't just survive, she became a source of knowledge for someone else's future birth. Her experience could teach younger women what labor looked like, what helped, and what warning signs to recognize. Over thousands of generations, those observations accumulated. But there is another clue hidden inside our own bodies. Human babies don't simply emerge head first without movement. During birth, the baby's head and body go through a series of rotations to navigate the mother's curved birth canal. This complicated process is one reason human childbirth is so different from simply laying an egg or giving birth to a much smaller-headed baby. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Humans evolved to survive well enough to reproduce. Those are not the same thing. So why didn't evolution simply make the birth canal much wider? Because the pelvis has another job. It has to help us walk efficiently on two legs. A pelvis that was dramatically wider might make childbirth easier, but it could also affect the mechanics of walking. So human evolution ended up balancing several competing demands. Walking, running, supporting the body, and giving birth to babies with large brains. It's an incredible compromise, and it may explain why human childbirth has remained so challenging. But here's something even more surprising. Ancient humans didn't know any of this. They didn't know about evolution. They didn't know about pelvic anatomy. They didn't know about fetal rotation. They didn't know about bacteria or blood circulation. Yet they still managed to develop practical knowledge that worked often enough for our species to continue. And that raises a fascinating question. If you were born 100,000 years ago, who would teach your mother how to give birth? Would it be her mother, an older woman in the community, a relative who had already delivered several babies, or perhaps a group of women who had collectively built up generations of experience? Tell me what you think in the comments, because there is another mystery. We can find ancient bones, we can examine ancient pelvises, we can study fetal remains, we can even discover evidence of pregnancy in archaeological sites, but we can't watch a prehistoric birth. The most important part of the story happened in moments that left almost no physical evidence behind. A woman screaming, women encouraging her, a baby finally crying, and an entire group realizing that another human life had arrived. Those moments disappeared almost instantly, but the consequences lasted forever. Because every generation of humans alive today exists partly because countless ancient mothers survived childbirth. Think about that. Your ancestors didn't need hospitals to begin the chain that eventually led to you. They survived childbirth in worlds where medicine was almost non-existent. They depended on their bodies, their communities, their experience, and each other. And perhaps the most incredible part is this. The women who gave birth tens of thousands of years ago faced a problem almost identical to one humans face today. The environment changed, the technology changed, the medicine changed, but the basic biological challenge remained. A human baby still has to make its way through a human birth canal. And somewhere thousands of generations ago, another woman was facing the same terrifying moment. No hospital, no modern equipment, just a community waiting, helping, and hoping to hear that first cry. If you enjoyed discovering the hidden realities of ancient human life, subscribe for more stories about our ancestors, forgotten history, strange science, and the mysteries buried beneath the human story.